Fellow citizens, about to undertake the arduous duties that I have been appointed to perform by the choice of a free people, I express gratitude for their confidence. While no thanks can be adequate to repay the honor they have conferred, I pledge zealous dedication to their service and their good.
That's Andrew Jackson. We've talked about him before as a soldier, a supporter of Indian removal, and an opponent of Texas annexation. This speech makes him sound like a man of the people, and rightfully so. He saw his role as being a Democrat, or someone who represents the people's political goals rather than his personal political beliefs. This democratic point of view had a major impact on politics, beginning in the 1820s. Let's take a look. Our learning objectives today are to explain how the era of good feelings led to a wave of populism in the 1820s, describe how Andrew Jackson's presidency differed from previous administrations, and describe the Whig Party as an opposition to Jackson's democratic movement. The era of good feelings was a time during the presidency of James Monroe in which there was only one main political party, the Democratic Republicans. The term good feelings is meant to represent a period of national pride following the War of 1812, in which many citizens were proud to be united and to be American. But in time, many poor citizens who struggled to make ends meet believed that rich elites were the ones with the good feelings. In their view, wealthy manufacturers, merchants, and planters didn't know the struggle of the common man. But they had traditionally controlled the government. That doesn't seem fair, right? Many people were eager to find a politician that would actually represent them, and they found Andrew Jackson, a candidate from west of the Appalachian Mountains who had fought in the War of 1812 and opposed rich people controlling the government. In the election of 1824, Jackson won the popular vote across the country, carrying many states in the South and in the West. But it wasn't enough to win the election in the Electoral College, in which you must receive over 50% of the votes. According to the Constitution, if no candidate wins the Electoral College, the top 3 candidates are sent to the House of Representatives, who must select a president from that group. But who was in charge of Congress? Mostly rich people, who feared Jackson's man of the people persona. John Quincy Adams, on the other hand, was an established politician who had served as Secretary of State under James Monroe, whose father was an important founder of the nation and someone that most congressmen knew personally. Henry Clay, a losing candidate and senator, rallied support behind John Quincy Adams, and afterward he was appointed Secretary of State. Jackson's supporters called it a corrupt bargain, believing, based on little evidence, that 2 men had privately decided who the president would be. In their view, political elites had again ignored the will of the people. That is not democratic. Enraged, Jackson started a new political party, the Democratic Party, with the founding principle that politicians should carry out the will of the people. They believed the largest share of citizens had voted for him for president, so that's who should become president. 4 years later, skilled political organizers like Martin Van Buren campaigned for Jackson around the country, turned out many new voters, and Jackson crushed John Quincy Adams in the election of 1828. President Jackson operated differently than other presidents. As a supporter of the common man, he aimed to bring the people into the White House so he could be more democratic. He held a public celebration at the White House the day of his inauguration. Some traveled hundreds of miles to attend, and some accounts say that it was so crowded and rowdy that Jackson had to leave through a window to escape the event. But he was committed to serving the people. Jackson later invited citizens to the White House to eat a 1,400-pound block of cheese and to talk to people in the government about their concerns. Jackson also believed that a president should stand apart from Congress instead of being a pushover. He believed a president could make an impact in a few ways. Firstly, he supported a rotation of officers, meaning that people who were appointed by the last president should leave office and that a new president should bring all new people into executive branch positions. That way, more people could serve, and the government would reflect the will of the people better. He also believed that staffing the executive branch with people who supported him was a way of listening to the people since they elected him. His opponents called this the spoils system, after the phrase, "To the winner belong the spoils of war." Jackson also had a kitchen cabinet, or group of trusted advisors that hold no official position in the government. They didn't need Senate approval. This way, he felt he could get good advice from people he trusted. He believed his policies were democratic, that they were aligned with the will of the people. For example, he opposed the National Bank. It was partly owned by private investors, but the bank used the government's money to give out loans. So borrowers had to pay interest to private owners to borrow the government's money? On this topic, Jackson said,
"It is to be regretted that the rich and powerful too often bend the acts of government to their selfish purposes."
In other words, he was saying, that's not fair. The government is helping out the rich at the expense of the people of the Union. When Henry Clay introduced a bill to extend the charter of the bank, Jackson used veto power to prevent Congress from keeping the bank around. And you probably remember that he supported Indian removal because many Americans wanted to settle on tribal lands. Many people thought that Jackson was too strong. In opposition to his policies, a Whig Party formed. Jackson was often uncompromising and famously used the veto power more than all 6 previous presidents combined. Whigs saw this as a dangerous precedent. Whigs supported a weaker president and a stronger Congress. That's more democratic, right? Because there are more congressmen who are directly accountable to the people and they are elected more often. Too much power concentrated in a single president felt like a monarchy. Whigs often supported generals who were viewed as less political and better leaders. They battled with Jackson on many issues throughout his presidency, much like Jefferson fought against Hamilton and Washington's policies. Be on the lookout for critiques of Andrew Jackson in your PDF. Andrew Jackson reshaped the nation between the era of good feelings and the Civil War. He created the new Democratic Party to bring the common people out to vote, ushering in an era of populism in the U.S. Jackson's presidency was a big break from previous presidents because he flexed his presidential authority to get things done in a way that no one had before. He used the veto to crush the bank. He supported Indian removal even though it was unconstitutional. He appointed Democrats to every office in the executive branch, and he did it all in the name of carrying out the will of the people. The era of good feelings was over. The Jacksonian era had begun. Next time, we'll learn about changes to the Southern economy. Be on the lookout for white gold. Until next time, remember to always be clever.
Hey.